The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and our growing family of broadcast affiliates right around this beautiful little planet of ours. And let me see, we're also on TalkStream Live. We start at 11 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, live Monday through Friday, and then from 2 a.m. Eastern until 10 a.m. Eastern. That's an entire 8 hours of programming from the X Zone Vault. That's, we cover the entire spectrum of our show's history, going from 1991 until 2015. And like I said, we've been celebrating 25 years on the air, and it's because of you, the members of the X Zone Nation, as well as our guests, just like Adrien Blackwell, who is joining us now. She is a former celebrity psychic turned full-time healer. Known internationally, she changed her professions when she heard her calling. Following her passion to truly help people, she discovered a new type of healing called ascended healing that have helped people find overnight success. She continues to do her healing work via webinars, seminars, and even recorded healings people can listen to. Her website is www.loveandyou.guru. And Adrien, welcome to the X Zone.
Well, thank you for having me.
My great pleasure. Adrien, what was it in your life that started you on this remarkable quest that you're on?
Well, I think there's a lot of things. I could probably tell you a lot of different stories that started me on this path. But I think what I remember the most is when I was 12 years old, and my mother gave me a book called You Could Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And when I started realizing that people could heal themselves with their own mind, I was fascinated, and I actually would start to test out the techniques and realize that they started to work. Not that I used them a lot until I was around 19 years old, but that really started me on the path because I always knew in the back of my mind that healing was possible. And so I could really honestly say, I think that was probably the moment where this was just like, yeah, I want to heal people. I really want to help people in this way figure out how the mind actually works. I mean, if I wasn't doing what I was doing now, I'd be a scientist. But I could go back even further to when I was 5 years old. And I would watch, do you remember the Psychic Friends Network commercial?
Oh, yes. Well, let me see, with Kenny Kingston.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would secretly watch that when I was little, like at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, because we weren't allowed to be into like spiritualists and psychics and things like that. And I would go, I want to be like that, but I also want to be like a fairy that magically sprinkles fairy dust at people's homes and make them happy. Like I always wanted to get rid of suffering, a lot like the Buddha.
Wow.
So I could also go back there and tell you about that.
I've got to tell you, before you go on with your story, I've had the pleasure of having Kenny Kingston on the show a number of times, and I must tell you, he is so genuine. He is one of the greatest persons I've ever met.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So here you are. You're healing people now. You used to read people, help people through the psychic realm. And I believe you are a scientist, a new age scientist. And you're healing people, you're teaching people. Isn't that what a scientist does? You do your research, you're able to replicate it, and you're using what you've learned and what you've discovered for the help of humanity.
Yeah, I actually always tell people I'm a spiritual scientist because I'm not like a lot of the psychics or healers that you find out there. It's kind of like I don't want you to believe anything I have to say until you have your own proof
Right.
that it works. And I like to find formulas. I like to see what exactly works, write it down specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and keep reusing it over and over and over again. I love science. I always have. So I definitely would be more like the metaphysical science. Exactly.
What is ascended healing, and how did you discover it?
Um, it was an interesting journey. I've actually been a healer off and on for about 16, 17 years.
My gosh.
And I started out when I was like 20, 19, 20. I started doing Reiki, and I
Mm-hmm.
moved on to doing massage therapy and then shamanic healing, reconnection, regenesis. And I studied medical qigong. And it's funny because a lot of people who have followed me for a really long time, they would be like, "Oh, you left out these things that you used to, that you used to do that you learned."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I forgot about it because I've studied so many different modalities. And I'm going to be honest, I used to have psychics tell me all the time that you are going to be a full-time healer, and I would argue about it because I'm like, I don't like healing, I don't want to do it, I'd rather be a psychic. And the reason was because I would discover all of these people who didn't want to do the work for themselves. They wanted you to fix them
Yeah.
or psychically tell them that their life is going to be better, and they didn't have to do any work. And that really bothered me. So I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing healing work. Well, I discovered this healing technique. I actually went to school for it. And I discovered this healing technique that was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in my life, that was like instant healing. And I kept hearing a voice telling me, you're going to be able to do it even faster, you're going to be able to do this even faster, just keep practicing. And I was like, there's no way you can find a faster healing than this. So one day I was in meditation and I heard a voice tell me, start recording, start recording, start recording. And I argue with the voice. I always argue with the voices until I hear it the third time. If I hear it a third time, I no longer argue with the voices that I hear. So I heard it a third time and I pressed record on my iPhone and I just started talking. And it was interesting because I just started talking about egos. And then all of a sudden I decided I was just going to do this old form of healing that I was doing. And all of a sudden I just leave my body and I don't know what happened. I heard a couple of things like voices, them telling me things. And then all of a sudden I was hit back into my body. Like I felt the pounding of my spirit hitting back into my body. And I knew that I would never be the same. I knew something deep had happened, some kind of deep healing had happened, and I would never do the same kind of healing I was doing before. And I started to realize I was going into the gamma state, which a lot of people believe that the John of God healer is doing that because, he performs surgeries on people without anesthetics, and he's able to do like instant healings on certain people. And they believe he's doing the same thing. And I kept getting, that's where you're going. You're going into a deeper part of your mind that's harder to get to. And the healings have been way more incredible than anything else I've ever experienced. I mean, just to give you an example,
Please
I've
do.
had people I've had people listen to my recorded healings and actually get rid of chronic pain. Just one listen, chronic pain disappears.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And that's just one experience. I think within 2 months of doing this healing work, I had more testimonials with the healing work than I ever had being a psychic. And I used to get testimonials a lot, but this was like nothing I've ever seen. I could have wrote a book just with the testimonials. Recently, I started teaching a class called Make Money Now, No Excuses. And what I do with all of my classes is I teach a fundamental truth, and then we do formulas. These are the formulas that you have to try, and then we're going to do healing at the end to remove your blocks. Well, one of my clients remembered me saying during the class that I wanted to create millionaires from this course, and she said, you did it. Like within 2 months of her finishing the course, she actually has a net worth of over $1 million. Another woman, she wanted to get a healing from me, and her intention, and I always tell people to set a clear intention. If you don't know what you want, then you already have what you desire, which is nothing. So she wanted $50,000 without having to work for it. And she said within 2 months, she almost hit that $50,000 without having to work for it. So these are kind of like the miracles that I've seen work.
All right. So why do like if these miracles, and I'm not doubting you, if these miracles can truly happen, Why doesn't the medical community get a hold of you and others who can perform these miracles and allow you to work on people that the medical community, basically says, you know what? We've done everything for you that we can. Just prepare yourself for the great beyond.
I think if the medical community got a hold of me, I wouldn't be doing healing works. I might be somewhere else doing something else. I don't have a lot of faith in the medical community. I don't, you'd have to go into like all these conspiracies and these thoughts and the documentaries and the reports and everything. There's nothing that tells me that they would ever want me to actually heal someone. And I think the biggest issue with our medical communities around the world is that they make money from kind of solving your problem, but continuously solving your problem. So if they were ever to fix you, then how are they going to make money from you in the first place? And it's really interesting that you even asked this question, because I'm talking to a few of my clients today, and I was like, I just want to let you know, because I know that this is an issue I've seen amongst healers. It's not just the medical community. It's every kind of business you can find, is that they make money solving a problem, but the problem has to persist, or it has to keep going for them to keep making money, unless they're doing upkeep and maintenance on whatever they fix for you. And I was like, I just want to let you know that I have a lot of clients who actually fix their lives to the point where I don't have to work with them anymore. And maybe once a year, they'll contact me and say, hey, I want to manifest something big. Can we work together? So my goal is to fix you, even if I never work with you again after that. It's not just about making the money. There's enough people in the world right now for me to work with to not have to keep you sick or hurt or whatever the case may be of what I'm helping you with. And I said, if one day the whole world is clear and healed, which I hope happens in my lifetime, then I'll find a new way to make money. That's all there is to it. So there's not a lot of people out there that I find that have that mindset. So that's why I don't think anybody would come to me and go, hey, can you solve a problem, if they're making money off of your problems?
Okay, but what can you do long distance healings and long distance miracles?
I don't really do much in person unless it's a group session.
Wow.
So when I'm doing the webinars, I'm doing healings via the webinars. If I'm doing the recorded sessions, I'm doing recorded sessions, or I'm on Skype or on the phone. I actually don't do very much in person, because you don't have to, because you're going into a brain state. You're going into that really hard to get to brain state, and you're staying in that focus, you're staying in that energy, and you're creating change within that energy. So the client is changing with you. And I thought it was really interesting, because I saw that there was something about psychologists have named something where it's like a group hallucination.
Yes.
So somehow it's through telepathy, everybody is able to see the same thing. And I thought that was so funny, because I'm like, mainstream doesn't cover the fact that they have the scientific name for this stuff, So I'm like, if they believe that we can all hallucinate the same thing, then and you're doing that through telepathy, it can't be that hard to believe that you could heal that way too, right? So that's basically what I'm doing. I actually don't need the person there at all.
Tell me about your most profound healing that you've done to date.
There's quite a few of them.
All right, give me your
just one. I think
give me your top. Give me your top 3.
I shared with you the top 2, which is about the money, because
Right.
that's one of the biggest issues today. If people could get enough money, they could get health care if they needed it. They could get healers if they needed it. The money is huge. But I will say, outside of the money, my top one is one of my clients. She's actually been working with me for about 12 years as a psychic. She didn't want the healing work. And I actually have a recorded testimonial of her saying this too. She said, I was skeptical and didn't understand what this whole healing thing was about, so I didn't want it. So really what happened was I sent her one of my recorded healings, the very first one I did with the ego. And I knew that she hadn't listened to it and that she didn't want to listen to it. So I wrote her and asked her, did you listen to it? Because I knew once I asked her, she would do it, because she would be too embarrassed to say she didn't. So she said, I'm going to be honest with you. This was the next day. She said, I'm going to be honest with you. She goes, I started to listen to it and I felt like it wasn't for me, so I didn't complete it. But after you asked me, I was embarrassed. I was right. She played the rest of it and she said something happened. She goes, I want more healing. So it was a couple of months later, she told me her story. And I didn't even fully know this when I was doing psychic readings for her, which is she had suffered bipolar and depression for 35 years. She had been on medication for 10 years. She said when she heard that recording, she felt it lift up and off of her. So she works with her therapist, and the therapist starts working with her to get off of her medication and then ask her, "What are you doing?" Because it works. And the woman said, she was like, "I sent her your healing." And I said, "This is what I've been doing differently." And she's been fine for about a year. She was like, "It's just incredible, how she can actually function now with not having this disorder." So to me, beyond the money, that's probably the most profound thing I've heard.
So how do you explain how it works?
I explain to people that we work within frequencies. I believe nothing can be created without a vibration, without a sound vibration, which is what frequency is. And so when you're working within the mind, you're creating sound frequencies. And if you had the kind of recordings that you needed to pick up these sounds, you would hear that each frequency that your brain is emitting has a sound. Just like they're finding that every planet has sounds when you go out into the universe and you have the right equipment. So you're sending a sound vibration in the right frequency. Now, when you break up somebody's block that they have, or old belief system that they have that's creating a block within their physical body, their mental body, their spiritual bodies, your body goes back to homeostasis. Your mind goes back to homeostasis. It goes back to where it's supposed to be. So I don't have to necessarily fix people. I just have to remove the blocks and let their body do whatever their body does. So we're literally just working within frequency.
So basically, you're performing frequency angioblasting.
Yeah, I guess if that's what you want to call it, yeah.
How do you incorporate the healing work you do with the paranormal work that you do?
I think maybe I was doing a little bit of this when I was doing my paranormal investigations. I remember on one occasion, we were doing a paranormal investigation. They kept saying it was demonic. It was demonic. And I don't really have a belief in something being demonic per se, based on the stories of what demons are. I believe that there's negative energy and there's positive energy. And so when you work with it on really that simple basis, I feel like you can get a lot more done when you're not, it's kind of like going in as a scientist. You're not going in trying to say what this thing is. And so I remember I had did something with my brain, which I've been doing for a long time. I just didn't know what I was doing.
It sounds like you've been using it.
I have been I've been using it, just not to this depth that I'm doing now. But I had been going into this brain frequency, and I was like, "Can you tell me why you're angry? Why do people think you're a demon?" And this spirit started telling me how this used to be my store. I lost my wife. I lost my kids. I lost my money, and I'm angry because nobody listens to me. And I thought, that's really interesting. I was like, well, if I tell your story and ask people to listen to you, would you mind stop doing what you're doing in the store? And this person told me yes. And so after that communication, after going into that really deep communication and what I felt like I was trying to do, which was send him healing, and I didn't know if that was actually working or not because this was years ago. But they said that everything stopped within the store. It was a furniture store. So I think even then, using the paranormal and doing the paranormal, I was using this and marrying the two together, because if you were to take me to a haunted house now that had supposedly a negative spirit or a demon, I would do the same thing. I would use the frequency and heal them just like you would heal the person, because it's just a frequency. A body is not needed.
So, all right, let me understand this. So basically, where did this power come from? I'm kind of, I guess I'd like to know the origin of it.
If I were to say the origin, I would say the origin comes from practice, because I believe every person on planet Earth can do what I'm doing right now. And it always reminds me of, when religious people always talk about Jesus, 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 and Jesus performed miracles and Jesus is going to come back. And I'd be like, well, if you actually read the Bible, it says, Jesus says you can do as I do.
Exactly.
So I'm like, well, if Jesus was performing miracles, then why can't we perform miracles? And this is just an everyday part of life, because I practice. That's the only difference between me and somebody off the street who can't do this.
So would you say that performing a miracle is just the manipulation of energy?
Yes. I'd absolutely say that miracles are not mystical.
Fascinating.
At all. Yeah.
Let's go back to your paranormal side for a few moments here. During your time as a paranormal investigator, what was your most exciting investigation that you worked on?
I have had a lot of exciting paranormal stories,
Mm-hmm.
and I will say, just something that I worked on would be, I was actually doing the psychic fairs at the time, and somebody approached me and asked me if I'd be willing to do paranormal investigations. And this was the very first paranormal investigation I ever did. So they were like, you have to come up to this lodge and get a room, and they were giving us the whole night
Mm-hmm.
to investigate in this lodge. So I didn't know where this lodge was. I'd never been, I was young, I was really young. And so I had no idea what the background was, and I didn't know you could search online and find out these things either. So they had tested me, which I didn't know until later when they asked me, is there anything that you pick up initially before we take you through this place? And I said, as a matter of fact, in this back room, there's a woman, and she's kind of like a nurse or something, but she's looking out of the window and she's telling me she's been waiting for her long lost love. And I said that we can see the road out of the window, but she's telling me this isn't the road, that the road is actually here, and that's how they're coming in, and that he went off to war and she's waiting for him to come back. And I said, and I'm hearing all these children. Where did they keep the children? I couldn't stop asking that question because there's so many kids. And I'm knowing that this is a lodge and not even thinking that it could have been something else later on. And so after all night long of paranormal investigating and getting information and even getting pictures, because I had asked the woman said, I actually don't want you in my room. And so I had to like try to convince everybody to leave the room. And she said, listen, if you guys get out of her room, she will go outside and take a picture under the tree. And sure enough, she appeared right there, and you could see her in her dress, her hair, everything. But how they tested me is I didn't know that this place had been on the Travel Channel. So she said, we figured you probably knew about it, but there's one thing you said that was never on the Travel Channel. They never talk about, nobody knows about this. But it's in the contract that any manager who works there has to make sure that the curtains stay open, because there's a spirit in that room that continuously opens the curtains if somebody goes in there and shuts it. So even when you rent the room, it's kind of like, please make sure the curtains stay open, but they don't tell people why. So she was like, there's no way for you to have known that, because that's one of the things I talked about. She's at the window. She's waiting for that person to come back. She doesn't want you to close the curtains. I mean, there was just so much stuff that she was telling me. And then they said, also, the road that you pointed to is where the road used to come in. And then they created a new road, like back in the
Wow.
80s. She was like, you got so much stuff right. But even to that picture always amazed me, because she told me she would do it. And I think that blew my mind at that point. So there's crazier things that have happened in paranormal investigations, but that was the first time my mind was just like, this is real. Like, wow, this is wild. I have proof.
There you go. You and I have to take our break at the bottom of the hour. Please stand by. Exonation, our guest this hour is Adrien Blackwell, and her website is loveandyou.guru. And we'll be back after we listen to this edition of Stairway to Heaven with Gwilda Wiyaka. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. Yeah, I am Rob McConnell, and I have been doing the X Zone for 25 years, starting our 26th year this year. My guest to this hour is Adrien Blackwell. And Adrien, why do you think in the year 2016 so many people are turning to practitioners of the paranormal, like psychics, mediums, channels, and New Age practitioners and alternative healers like yourself?
Well, to look at that, you have to look at the fact that it's not anything new. This is something that's been happening for thousands of years. I mean, the Bible is based off of psychics and seers and foretellers and things like that. And it's interesting that a lot of Christians don't actually realize what their religion is based on, because they don't believe in psychics nowadays. It's kind of like, read the Bible and check that out. So it's been going around for how long? I mean, how long is the Bible? And then when you look at the 1800s is so fascinating to me because there was Lilydale, and all these people would flock there to do seances and to communicate with the dead and seek out mediums. So it's just something that's continued for a long period of time. It's nothing that's went out of style. It's based on, religion and our personal interest of what happens after we die.
Do you think in this new technologically advanced age of ours and the opening and the acceptance of the new spirituality or the revision or the revival of the old spirituality, that the established religious philosophies have no place in society?
That's a very interesting question. I personally, and of course this is opinion, I
Hmm.
personally think that everybody needs something to believe in, whether it's your higher self
Yeah,
or your mother and your father or God or Jesus, whatever you believe in. I personally think religion has done a lot of harm
I agree.
because of how they try to control you and then how they give you a bit of information and say, hey, this is what our religion is based on, but you're not allowed to practice that today, and how they pick and choose what's good with the Bible and what's bad with the Bible. And so it's definitely done a lot of harm, which I've seen in a lot of my healing work and how I have to heal people. A
Hmm.
lot of people have a belief that God is bad. God is this awful, evil man in the universe who doesn't want them to be successful or happy, because that's what religion basically says. So I really don't think religion has a place. I believe spirituality has a place. I believe, anything that makes you feel better about yourself and
Right.
helps the human race get along is better for our community. And religion doesn't really have that background.
The world today is undeniably screwed up. I mean, we are royally screwing this beautiful planet that we are so fortunate to be part of. As a person who not only deals with psychic phenomenon, but who is a healer, do you think that it's too late to turn things around and to bring one and all together so that we can live in harmony?
As a lot of people probably have discussed on your show, many of us believe that we're going through an ascension process. Things
Hmm.
are speeding up, things
Yeah.
are happening that we can't quite explain and never before has happened in history. So I think at this point, when it's too late, is when we're all extinct, which is a possibility. But when you look at how the world is changing, like I've said, I've been doing this for 16 years, and I used to wonder why I had to suffer and why healing didn't really work and why it worked sometimes and why it didn't work others. And I had so many questions. And thank goodness I had those questions, and I realized why I had to go through what I had to go through is because now I have proof. I have proof over 16 years. It's like that scientific proof that things are speeding up. I've
Hmm.
never seen people heal as fast as I have in this day and age. Even with healers that are new, they may not be creating instant healing, but they can create healing within 3 or 4 sessions. And that was something I don't remember seeing a lot of, just 10 years ago. And so and I would love to say it's my healing. It's just me and I'm special. But the reality is that a lot of people are doing what I'm doing, and it has speeded up over the time. So when you start to look at that and you start to look at how many people have awakened, even here in the United States, with Bernie Sanders and him getting people involved, so millions of people are now opening their eyes to what's happening. I can't say that it's too late. I feel like he was meant to do the job that he was meant to do. Who knows if he's going to continue or what he's going to do at this point? That doesn't matter. The What really matters is that we are waking up and we're seeing people waking up. We see people healing faster. We see the proof that we can change, and I think that's what we needed all along. So many people feel powerless.
So many people give the power away so easily,
Yes, they do,
you know?
especially here. Yep. Yeah.
Have you seen a difference in the questions that people are asking you when you do psychic readings compared to what they used to? Like, we used to have psychics on every Friday night. We'd open up the lines, and it came to the point where I decided not to do it anymore because I could see a dependency with certain callers.
Yep.
the same question time and time again. Finally, one of the callers was saying, am I going to find Mr. Right? And I said to the psychic, I want to take this call. I said, all right now, are you going to find Mr. Right? Are you going out and actively looking for Mr. Right? Does Mr. Right even know you're there? And unless you are, the only Mr. Right you're going to find is the UPS guy, the pizza delivery guy, the chicken delivery guy, or the postman.
Oh my goodness. My goodness. You almost have me in tears over here. I used to do a radio show.
Yeah.
And my co-host actually would say the same thing. Let me take this call. And he would go, have you even met this person? Or did you just meet online? And the women would always say, I only met them online, but they're asking, are they going to get married? And I could not stop laughing because I was like, did you psychically pick that up? He's like, I've seen it enough. I've seen it enough. And there was this time for years where that was like the only question you really hear people ask was about love. And it was some of the most ridiculous questions. And that was one of the reasons that I was like, okay, I got to quit doing this psychic reading thing because this isn't benefiting anybody.
You know,
all of a sudden, people started asking about money and spiritualities. It's completely changed. Completely.
Listen, as a next talk show host yourself, tell me about the weirdest call that you ever received. I mean, we all have one that, you know, just kind of brings a smile to our face when we're in the most excruciating pain in a dental seat.
Me and my co-host were having an argument online, which is always good radio when you don't agree with the other person, but it was rare that we would not completely just not disagree. So we're having this argument online and we end up taking this caller to get their opinion. And he starts talking about how, and me and my co-host have been friends for a good 10 years. I think we've been friends at 12 or 13 years at this point.
Right.
And he was talking about how you could tell that there's sexual tension and that you two like each other and blah, 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 blah. And I couldn't stop laughing because it was so far from the truth. I was like, can people just not get into a disagreement nowadays? Is this just, people have been watching way too much reality TV. And I will never forget that because it was the strangest call ever. It was like, you didn't weigh in on your opinion of what we were talking about. You just want the reality TV on the radio.
and you know, that has to be the biggest oxymoron that goes along with military intelligence, postal service, and reality TV.
Yes. Yeah.
The weirdest guest that I ever had, because callers, you know about callers and how wacky they can be, you know.
Yes.
You know, I think that the Wackadoodle Club was actually formed by radio call-in callers. I had this psychic come into the studio, and he was sitting in front of me, and behind him was the glass with my producer. On the other side of the glass to my back was the FM station, because we were an FM. We had two FM stations and an AM station in the same building.
Ah.
And this psychic is saying, all right, I'm a pet psychic. I'm a pet communicator. I am the best in the world. And as soon as you say that, you're inviting trouble. Like, you're inviting trouble. Anyway, my producer, Mark, types me a little message. It comes up into the studio screen. Caller on number 1. His name is Ben, and he has lost his one-eye willy weasel.
What?
So we take the call. Do you know what a one-eye willy weasel is?
No.
It's a man's part.
I was wondering. I thought that's what you meant. What?
Okay, so and when I saw it was Ben, I knew it was Ben McVie, who was behind me in the FM studio, because in the FM studios, they just would play a 20-minute set. He'd come on, do a bit of a promo, and then play another 20-minute set. And I figured, thank God Ben's here. So Ben gets on the line with the psychic and says, the psychic basically says, well, what's your problem? And Ben kind of says, well, it's tragic. It's tragic. I can't find him. I don't know where he's gone. And the psychic said, who? And Ben says, my one-eyed Willie Weasel.
Oh, no.
Well, I can see Martin splitting a gut in the producer's room. Like he is splitting a gut. The lines are flashing left, right, and center. And the psychic says, well, would you like me to help him find you? Yes. Anyway, this went on, and the psychic told Ben that I can see your one-eyed Willie Weasel. Well, when he said that, it was like, oh my God. And I could hear Ben laughing through the studio glass on the other side. This went on for about 20 minutes. And the poor psychic got himself deeper and deeper and deeper with it. And he thought he was, trying to help out this poor guy who lost his one-eye Willie Weasel. So Ben had to get ready for his next set. And he said, well, you know what? I'm going to do everything you suggested. And I want to thank you so much for looking out for my one-eyed Willie Weasel. Well, about 3 weeks later, I get a call from this psychic. And he says, Rob, it's so-and-so, the animal communicator, the pet psychic. And he says, I have to ask you a question. I said, what? Did that caller Ben ever get his hands on his one-eyed Willie Weasel? I lost it.
No!
I lost it because 3 weeks later, he did not clue in to what Ben was talking about. And he was supposed to be a world-famous animal communicator and pet psychic.
That's horrible. That is so horrible. I want to hear that show so bad right now.
Well, I must tell you that, radio stations, they put blooper reels together for the Christmas party. And these are usually best listened to before the party starts. Well, needless to say, Ben and Martin and I received the blooper reel of the year with that little spoof that we did. But it was like, you're a psychic, and if you're going to say that you are the world's best, go ahead, give it your best shot. Do you think that psychics like that who profess to be the best are the psychics to watch out for?
Oh, absolutely. To be honest with you, I don't trust a lot of psychics. I mean, I have known psychics in their hundreds, and everybody has some type of psychic ability. Whether they use it or not is really the question.
I agree.
And yeah, I have a really, really hard time even being around psychics to the point where I won't even get readings anymore. I have no interest in getting readings because there's two people that I would contact in my life, which is a lot more than most people could say, that I could actually say, hey, I need a reading. And if I needed one, I would know that they would give me their honest answer. Other than that, absolutely not,
Another thing that we used to do, we also publish a newspaper every month called the X-Chronicles newspaper. We've been publishing it monthly since, the same month we started the radio show going back 25 years ago. And it's so funny because come the middle of December, we start getting all of these psychic predictions from all these psychics who want to have their psychic predictions published in our newspaper for the next year. And I used to say, no, we won't do that because, what happens if a prediction doesn't come, it doesn't happen. It's just going to make you look bad. Well, they don't care. They want their predictions out there because it's marketing.
You know what? During one of my shows, I had invited one of my friends on who's a psychic and astrologer.
Right.
And she's not comfortable being on the radio. She's not comfortable being on TV, but she agreed to do it because it was my show. And we were doing a prediction show. And she came out and she said, in my astrology reading this year, I don't remember what year it was, but she said people are going to start occupying. And she started talking about basically the Occupy the movement that we had. We had Occupy Wall Street. And
Yes.
everything else.
Yeah.
And when when I heard the first bit of news about occupying Wall Street, my mouth just dropped and I went, I have to go back and listen to that show. And
Yeah.
so I went back and listened to it, and sure enough, she actually used the word people are going to start occupying, and it floored me. So I was like, you really should start doing yearly predictions, and let's just start testing this to see how accurate you are. But that was always amazing to me.
I had a psychic from here in Hamilton come to the studio with her goat. I mean, this is a real goat. Because it was a psychic goat. And we had to see this. And
funny.
what she did, she had two bowls. One was green and one was red. If the question was asked to the psychic goat and it went to the green bowl, that was a yes. And then if she asked a question and the answer was no, the goat went to the red bowl.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, nobody, I guess she forgot to realize that what goes in must come out. And that was the last time we ever had an animal in the studio.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and the psychic octopus or something?
Oh, my gosh. Yes. That did the soccer predictions.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems to be a thing now. It's a thing.
It's a thing. Hey, listen, speaking about it's a thing, you and I have to say so long for tonight, but I'd love to have you back on in the future. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.
I love what you're doing, helping people. That's what this world is really about, people helping people. And let our listeners know how they can, how they can contact you if they'd like to get a copy of your course or find out from you how they can be healed.
And I give away a lot of free things, so people can always go on my website to get free things at www.loveandyou.guru. And they can also find me on Facebook under my Facebook group, which is Activate Cosmic Consciousness.
I love it. And you is not spelled E-W-E, is it? Get it? The goat? You? Sorry about that. Adrien, take care of yourself, my dear. It's been a great pleasure, and we look forward to the next time you join us. Until then, keep smiling. All right, Exo Nation, coming up next, we are going to be speaking about UFOs, government conspiracies, and much more. Wilbur Allen is my guest, and Wilbur and I will be joining you on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.